12 pages of apology were prepared for him, but instead of reading them, he folded the paper and asked the world a single question. When will you apologize to Africa? Inside the United Nations, the outcome seemed scripted before it even began. Diplomats had spent days polishing 12 carefully drafted pages, a forced apology dressed as diplomacy. Every sentence was chosen not to express truth, but to erase it. Behind the polished words was a demand: bend your voice, soften your accusations, and accept the discipline of the powerful. But the pressure wasn't just on paper. In Paris, in Washington, in Tel Aviv, the phones rang with urgent reminders: partnership, cooperation, assistance, words that sounded polite but carried hidden threats. Anonymous memoranda moved through corridors. Whispers in embassies turned into warnings: yield, retract, or risk losing everything. For the men drafting those 12 pages, this was routine. Africa had been here before, leaders summoned, voices corrected, dignity traded for aid. To them, it was another performance of obedience in a long history of submission. But for the man at the center, this wasn't a negotiation. It was a test of whether a small, landlocked nation could still claim its voice against centuries of control. A stage set for humiliation was slowly turning into the stage for defiance. This was never about one man, one speech, or even one country. It was about the soul of a continent. For centuries, Africa has been told to listen, to obey, to apologize. Every loan, every so-called partnership, every carefully worded document carried the same hidden message: you are not free to speak in your own voice. To accept those 12 pages would not only have meant reading an apology, it would have meant surrendering dignity itself. It would have told millions of Africans that their leaders are still not allowed to stand tall, that their sovereignty can be traded for aid, and that silence is the price of survival. But defiance, on the other hand, meant risk. Risk of sanctions, risk of isolation, risk of being branded reckless or immature by the very powers who once enslaved entire nations. Yet the stakes went far beyond politics or economics. This was about identity, memory, and pride. The question was not simply, will he read the paper? The question was, will Africa bow once again, or will it finally stand and speak? But when the lights dimmed and the cameras turned toward the podium, something no one expected happened. He did not reach for the 12-page script they had prepared for him. He did not bow his head or adjust his tie to look polite for the world's elite. Instead, he placed the papers aside and touched. The room froze. Every delegate knew what that meant. He was about to break the script, to speak with his own words, not theirs. A ripple of unease moved across the chamber. Some ambassadors shifted nervously in their seats, while others reached for their earpieces, waiting for the translation that would soon shake the entire assembly. And then, with a voice steady but sharp like steel, he began: "We have been silenced for too long. Today, I will not read the words of foreign powers. I will speak for my people." That one sentence shattered decades of carefully constructed control. The diplomats who had been so confident suddenly looked uneasy. Whispers filled the hall. For the first time, the man at the podium was not a puppet, but a leader defying the world's strongest powers. Live, in front of millions watching. The words echoed through the chamber like thunder. At first, silence. No applause. No polite nods. Only shock. The representatives of powerful nations exchanged uneasy glances, their carefully rehearsed control slipping through their fingers. Cameras zoomed in on faces, some pale with anger, others lit with admiration. Outside the United Nations building, the world reacted instantly. Newsrooms scrambled to rewrite their headlines. In Africa, people gathered around televisions, radios, and phones, cheering as if they were hearing their own voice for the first time. On social media, clips of the speech spread like wildfire, reaching millions before the man had even left the stage. But not everyone was celebrating. In Washington, Paris, and London, the speech was labeled dangerous. Think tanks and political analysts rushed to predict sanctions, coups, or even assassination attempts. The establishment was furious, because what was supposed to be a scripted, submissive apology had turned into a declaration of independence. For many across the global south, that moment became a symbol of courage, proof that even in the heart of the world's most powerful institution, one voice, unchained and unafraid, could shake the pillars of global order.
As the echoes of his words faded, one truth became impossible to ignore: the balance of power was shifting. For decades, the voices of smaller nations had been buried under the weight of superpowers, reduced to silence in rooms where decisions were made without them. But in that single speech, the silence was broken. The man walked away from the podium with no notes, no apologies, and no regrets, leaving behind a storm that the world could not contain. His defiance was more than just a speech, it was a spark. And like every spark, it carried the power to ignite something far greater. The question is no longer what he said, but what we do with it. Will we watch history repeat itself, where the strong dictate and the weak obey? Or will we rise, inspired by his courage, to demand a world where justice is not a privilege of the powerful, but a right of all? Because sometimes one voice, spoken at the right time, can become the roar of millions. And when that happens, even the walls of the United Nations tremble.